Hello, my name is Martha McGill. I'm a British Academy Postdoctoral Fellow in History at Warwick, and I research supernatural beliefs in Britain in the early modern period, that is, between about 1500 and 1800. I'll be talking today about how my work can help us to reflect on the theme of being human, with particular reference to how humans relate to the wider world. So according to the most popular early modern conceptualizations of the universe, the natural world was imbued with supernatural forces. Christian theology underscored the existence of God, the devil, and a host of good or evil angels. Folklore, passed down over generations, populated the world with other strange entities, including ghosts, fairies, and nature spirits. These beings were all in various ways both like and unlike humans. Consider the case of fairies. Fairies appeared in several prominent literary works, including Shakespearean plays, and folkloric stories of encounters with fairies were popular especially in Scotland, Wales, and Cornwall. These accounts generally suggested that fairies had a society that mirrored human society. They had a country, fairyland, and a royal court. In many stories this was a matriarchal place ruled over in perpetuity by the fairy queen. Fairies could be protective and helpful towards humankind, or violent and vindictive. Their bodies looked human-like, and some stories told of fairies having sex with humans, but their forms were really spiritual and not subject to death or decay. In envisaging interactions with fairies, early modern people constructed theories about how humans fitted into a cosmos pervaded with other kinds of intelligent entity. So take as an example a story recorded by Robert Kirk, a minister at Aberfoyle in Perthshire, Scotland. Kirk took a keen interest in his parishioners' ideas about fairies. He speculated that fairies were a spiritual being somewhere in between humans and angels. In a work titled The Secret Commonwealth, compiled between 1691 and 1692, Kirk wrote of a woman who had recently given birth. While she was resting alone, a group of fairies appeared in her house. Kirk explained that fairies had light, changeable bodies, somewhat of the nature of a condensed cloud. But these bodies clearly had some substance, because the fairies were able to abduct the woman. They replaced her with a ghostly double, a mere shade that soon afterwards sickened and died. The woman, meanwhile, was borne away to fairyland. Kirk suggested that fairies lived underground, but their homes were lit by magical means. Certainly the woman found herself lodged in a bright and spacious house, but without windows or any obvious light source. There she was given a fairy baby to nurse. She was also provided with everything she needed, but she couldn't see any means of leaving. Nor could she see any fairies besides this suckling baby. One day, however, she found an ointment in her room and decided to anoint one of her eyes with it. Then there appeared a host of fairies. Elsewhere in his work, Kirk specified some of the activities that fairies might engage in: falling into trances, shape-shifting, using ointments to make themselves invisible or nimble, summoning up images of distant things, and spinning. The woman didn't get to enjoy the sight of the fairies for long. They were angered by her presumption in spying on them, and one fairy blew on the eye she had anointed, leaving it blinded. She saw no more of them, and time wore on. After 2 years, the fairy baby was weaned, and the woman was allowed to travel home. Her husband was understandably shocked by her sudden appearance, but she managed to convince him that it was indeed her, and they went on to have several more children together. Kirk ended by noting that many Highlanders added a copy of the Bible to women's beds to prevent them from being stolen away by the fairies. So observe firstly the power differential between humans and fairies here. The fairies were able to abduct the woman and inflict supernatural harm on her, and she was largely defenceless against them. Humans' only hope was recourse to divine protection. At the same time, the story underlines how fairies might themselves be dependent on humankind. Kirk wrote that fairy babies did not actually drink human milk, but they did imbibe its spirits and essences. We get a sense here of fairies as shadowy beings craving human vitality and intimacy with human bodies. The story depicts humans as vulnerable to the intrusions of the supernatural world, but also in some sense special, possessed of invigorative qualities that the fairies themselves lacked. Other stories told of different kinds of intimacy between humans and spirits. Demons featured especially frequently. Accused witches described sexual relationships with the devil. He used sex to assert his mastery over women's bodies and souls. There was also a common belief that demons might invade the human body, entering through the pores of the skin, or with the breath, or with the light into the eyes. There they could manipulate human thoughts and feelings, pushing people to behave sinfully. We get a sense once more of human vulnerability. Demonic power over humans was restrained only by God's command. At the same time, early modern sermons and religious treatises commonly framed devils as beings motivated by envy. They were jealous of the good angels, who continued to enjoy God's favour, and they were jealous of human beings who had the potential still to attain a blessed state. It was in part a kind of envious resentment that led the serpent to corrupt Eve in the Garden of Eden. So these stories do conceptualise humans as weak, but also again as having a privileged position within the universe. The atmosphere might be peopled with invisible spirits with powers beyond human ken, but humans remained exceptional, God's chosen children. Secular society today has different modes of envisaging humankind's place in the universe, but narratives of the supernatural reflect this enduring and potentially dangerous human tendency to envisage ourselves as in some way set apart from other animate entities. We've endeavoured to overcome the vulnerability of our bodies by seeking mastery over the natural world, without always appreciating our dependence on it. In the decades to come, humankind needs to do some rethinking about our relationship with our planet, and perhaps that requires us to explore different kinds of narrative. Narratives that don't compensate for human vulnerability by emphasising human exceptionalism, but instead are willing to frame our species as one often insignificant detail in a rich and varied ecosystem.